So, welcome back to 1111 with Chaga Tea. I'm Fiona Barrett, and our show is sponsored by Supernatural Lips and Good Boy Jesse. And today we have a very exciting show. We have a superhero in our local community as a guest, and I'm going to let Roberta introduce our special guest today.
Excellent. So I'm Roberta Chagas, and I'm really happy to be sitting here in Swampscott, my native town. And I'm sitting next to a man that I met in a coffee shop. This is Rabbi Baruch HaLevi, and we're really looking forward to hearing about Rabbi HaLevi's new book that he wrote with Ellen Frankel. And this is called Revolution of Jewish Spirit. And we are thrilled to have you here, so welcome.
Thank you.
Nice to see you.
Thrilling to be here.
Okay.
Welcome. It's a great book, by the way.
Thank you very much.
So, how do you feel about talking about the very, very beginning of when you were here, when you first came to the Swampscott community?
As long as you don't make me talk about my hair and how I had hair and now I cut it.
That's true. That's true.
Anything is on the table except that topic. So
I think you were famous for your hair before I even met you.
Sensitive subject, and God decided I would not have hair, not me. On a serious note, I was brought here 7 years ago at the formation of Congregation Shirat Hayam, as you both know, two merging, dying synagogues in Temple Israel and Temple Bethel. A very typical story, I think, around the country of conservative Judaism, Judaism in general. The difference was this was a community that was willing to face the hard facts and truth, and they merged, and I found them and they found me, and was the beginning of our journey. And the past 7 years is really, as you said, Roberta, about building foundation of trust, and a heck of a lot more on top of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know Fiona had noticed a particular concept in the book, and I know you wanted to talk about that.
I'm a health coach, and we have this approach when we're working with people who want to make lifestyle changes to add things into their lifestyle versus taking things out. And I noticed that you talked about that concept in your book too, as you were merging these communities. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you added in?
Sure.
Because I think there's some great examples there too.
Yeah, I think for community building in general, but even personally in life, I think what I called additive change and what you're referring to is essential because, especially in the situation which I inherited, there were two competing sides of the street, literally, across the street from one another, who were feeling like they were losing something or they had lost something. So instead of taking yet more away from them upon showing up and having wild ideas, and by the way, I learned this the hard way in my previous synagogue where I didn't understand additive change. So thrusting people into situations where they didn't feel a sense of trust and they felt like they were losing yet more did not seem like a good idea. So we really approached it with additive change, adding to and not subtracting from their experiences. That went a long ways, I think, into building the trust.
And the trust, in my particular perspective, to be able to approach a rabbi because of the value that a rabbi adds to the community, going to visit with you in situations where you really need compassion or you need support, to be able to just reach out to you is important. And I think that you must sense that in the community as well.
Well, I think what you're referring to is the whole shift into the new synagogue model, the new Jewish model that we've created, because the old synagogue, even architecturally, it was imposing, right? The doors say go away, the high stage, or bima as we call it. The rabbi was literally like 6 feet off the ground, and the congregants were down below, looking down at. It was not participatory. It was very literally the fixed seats called pews, what an apt name, because people were stuck in them and forward facing and listening to the rabbi. The shift really has been, and this isn't just me, this is kind of the world we live in, to much more of interaction and approachability and just reflecting that in a myriad of different ways, not the least of which is me spending more time at Starbucks than I do in my office, which is a way for me to justify my board why I'm at Starbucks, because this is part of our mission, people, right? But
maybe you'll be drinking Chaga tea there one day soon.
I look forward to when they serve a tall grande or venti Chaga tea. A great day.
And you also have this concept in your community now called radical hospitality, which I think is such an awesome concept. Can you share a little bit about that too?
Sure. I was just on a forum called Tolerance. It was all about tolerance. And I thought, what an atrocious word, tolerance, right? That we are going to tolerate each other is a pretty darn low bar. We can do better than tolerate. So hospitality is one thing, but radical hospitality, right? Going above and beyond, even when it's our comfort zone, to welcome somebody in. And really to get beyond these kind of narrow definition of who's in and who's out, which is, I think, part of our success. We've gotten rid of this idea of Jew, non-Jew, right? We have Jews, what I call semi-Jews, non-Jews, we have interfaith couples, we have all kinds of people seeking us out and calling us home because of the sense of radical hospitality that they are welcome. And, that comes through in a myriad of ways. Something kind of trivial, but it isn't trivial, is dress. On any given Shabbat, people are there in yoga clothes or soccer uniforms or jeans. As I always say, Levi Strauss was a Jew. Jeans are kosher.
That's right.
But that something as small as that makes persons feel wanted and welcome.
Yeah.
And I have to say that when I noticed that the eternal light had been moved from Temple Israel into the sanctuary, that was the eternal light, of course, is lit constantly, and it was just very emotional for me to see it hanging in this beautiful new sanctuary. So I loved that.
Well, that's actually a big part of, I think, why we're succeeding, is because this isn't New Age. When you read the book, sometimes it's referred to by some people who aren't so thrilled with what I'm doing, and there are plenty out there, as New Age. It's not New Age. It's anchored in ancient practice and tradition, and that's a good example of, there's history behind that, right? And it is, our kind of tagline sometimes is moving tradition forward. So it isn't inventing something out of nothing, but it's taking these ancient rites and ideas and values and making them live in a modern context.
So what do you think you would like to have our audience think about to maybe involve themselves in the community and do some things that you've done, or the congregation or the community has done?
One of my big kind of drives in this life is to reimagine God. I think God is dead in the way we usually think of God as the old man in the sky. For Christians, Santa Claus; for Jews, the Jewish version of Santa Claus, but it's the same thing, right? This kind of celestial butler or vending machine. You pray and something comes out. To me, that's not God. God is a sophisticated notion, and God can be experienced in embodied spirituality through movement type practices like yoga. God should be experienced in the food that we ingest, the wellness that we experience. God can be experienced in community. I invite people sometimes just come for lunch on Saturday, on Shabbat, because God can be found in a good bagel with cream cheese as easily as the rabbi's sermon. But not just the food, but also what happens around the food, hevra, friendship, community builds, and to really reimagine God in the 21st century in a far more dynamic, sophisticated way. That's what I see happening, and that's what I want to continue to happen.
Well, that's really, bringing back the family meal and having God be a part of that too.
Right. And expanding our notion of family, that it isn't just biology and blood, right? It is all kinds of families, all kinds of tribes within tribes, and really reclaiming the best sense of that tribal nature of humanity, and celebrating all kinds of tribes, welcoming people into the tent, into the tribe.
It's ironic, when I came over here today, I was listening to some music in the car, and this song came on, and it was called Choose Joy. And when you wake up in the morning to really just choose joy, you have a choice. You have a choice every day. And I'm so glad that we chose to have you on our show to really get a better feeling of what you're doing. We got an amazing bit of information from this wonderful book, Revolution of Jewish Spirit. I suggest that you definitely look this up. It's on Amazon, and I have it on Kindle too, because I thought maybe I would find myself somewhere in the car and need to read it. So I really want to thank you so much, Rabbi.
It was a pleasure.
Rabbi B.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you. And I also want to add that this is a great book. Even if you're not Jewish, I'm not Jewish, but I got a lot out of reading the book, and intend to visit your community as well. So I want to thank you for opening up that possibility for me too.
It's an honor and a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Would you like to have a little Chaga tea?
Of course.
Of course. Okay.
This is also an ancient wisdom.